Ah, hello, hello, chat. Oh, thank you so much for the super chat, revolutionary comrade. That's right, we're starting. We're starting. Hello, hey, Yuhin Tom. What's up, Bigfoot? Bigfoot. Welcome to the stream. Hey, Lee Rams. Six Valrock. What's up, Six? Glad you could join. That's a cool name. Six Valrock. Hey, Dee Dee. Glad you could join. What's up, Drift? Welcome back. Welcome back. Ah, gotta scroll. Hold on. What's up, Nikki? Glad you could join. Dum, dum, dum. Wait, am I not live? You can see me, right? I think so. What's up, Willa? Glad you could join. Hey, Cecilia. Yes, I am alive. I have a bit of a delay. Shit. Why does this happen? Let's see. No, I am off the VPN. What's going on? Let me see. I don't know what to do. Maybe it'll just get better. Just give it a little time for the stream to, I don't know, to heal itself. Okay, is it better? Is my VPN off? How do you know? You know everything about my setup, don't you? I do have a VPN. It is off. What's up, Hope? You can see me now. Good. Okay, so it's better. What's up, Janeri? Oh, you saw the notification, eh? So YouTube does work. Yeah, and YouTube, the stream needs some time to warm up, you know? It just woke up. It just needs to go brush his teeth. What's up, Korea? Hey, glad you could join. Yes. Nitesh, hello. Tokyo Hub, what's up? How are you guys doing? How are you guys doing this Sunday? I am doing okay. I have some food. So you know, I'm kind of suffering for you guys because you know, I bought a bunch of snacks, Japanese snacks last week, but I can't open them. I'm waiting for I always wait for the stream to open them, right? So they're all lying there in my pantry and I can't eat them, right? They're just lying there, they're just tempting me, right? But I can't eat them. So luckily it's a stream so I can open one of the food and I can eat. All right, this is honestly this is Pringles, right? This looks very much like Pringles. But apparently it is called Chip Star potato chips. It don't look like a star to me. But we shall see what it is. Oh, wow. Okay. Yes. Oh no, why? Is this necessary, you guys? I don't think they need to do that. That is too much packaging. Ugh. Okay. I think I'm just gonna leave it in. Okay. I open it up and then I'll put it back in here. You don't need the plastic inside, the plastic sleeve. Alright, this plastic condom is unnecessary. Ooh. I have no idea what flavor this is, but I don't know. It looks like sour cream and onion, but I don't think so. It's just salt. It just tastes like salt, and it tastes exactly like Pringles. I think they just took some Pringles and they just repackaged them. Oh my god. It's exactly like Pringles. You think it's to be not like Pringles? That's why they put the little plastic thing inside. It tastes exactly like Pringles. I think it is. I wouldn't be surprised if it's made by the same people. Mr. Pringles. A bunch. That looks like a bunch of sand matched up together. Okay. Yeah, it's Pringles, but in a Japanese packaging. Have I tried Dagashi fried squid? I don't know if I have, but I've tried fried squid before. I actually have it. I have fried squid. I just haven't opened it yet, so we'll eat it in some other stream. Fried squid is so good. Wait. No. Sorry. I meant dried squid. I haven't had fried squid. How is that? What is that? Is that good? Let's look it up. What is that? Is that just calamari? I don't think Dagashi. Oh, ew. What? It doesn't look that appetizing, not gonna lie. But is it good? Okay, I'll keep that in mind then. You think the worst thing that can be done to seafood is frying it. What about calamari? Calamari is excellent. Oh, look at this. What is this? Squid on a stick. That looks awesome too. All right. So let's get on with it. So what happened? What happened last chapter? Okay. So let's go back to the camera. What happened last chapter was remember Ling Hu Chong, our hero, has made has a sworn brother now, and his sworn brother is Xiang Wenxiang, right? And this is the guy who's he's an old dude, but he's very powerful, and he kind of saved him. Ling Hu Chong kind of saved him from a mob. They were fighting a mob of like 100 different people together. So they escaped, and they become sworn brothers. And Xiang Wenxiang, he finds out that Ling Hu Chong is sick, right? He's fatally sick. He's going to die soon, and he says he has a way to cure Ling Hu Chong, right? So they go and visit these guys. They're called the Four Playfellows of Jiannan. All right, and each one of them, I think each one of them knows each one of them is an expert at a particular art. All right, so they go visit, and Wen Tian pretends that he is the uncle master of Chief Zhuo, and Chief Zhuo is the leader of the Five Mountains Sword Alliance. Okay, He pretends that he's the uncle master of Chief Zhuo, and he pretends that Ling Hu Chuang is actually Feng Qingyang, who is actually the master that the uncle master that taught Ling Hu Chuang his sword art that he has right now. So they go in this the residence of the 4 playfellows of Jianan, and they meet a Mr. Paint. Okay, and this Mr. Paint guy is an expert painter, but he really, really loves wine. Okay, and this is where we find out that Wen Xian has prepared everything, right? He has a whole master plan going on to kind of trick these guys, I guess. So Mr. Paint loves wine, and then Ling Hu Chong uses his wine knowledge that he learned from the Elder Bamboo Green, and he uses all that knowledge to impress him, right? So this Mr. Paint is very impressed by Ling Hu Chong's knowledge of wine, and he feeds him all this wine that he has, all this special wine that he has at home. And to trick him, Ling Hu Chong says that one of the wines, wait, was it Ling Hu Chong or was it Wen Xian? One of them, they say that one of the wines needs to be drunk really cold, right? It's only really good if it's drank really cold. So they don't have any ice around. But one of the other 4 playfellows is a Mr. Blackwhite. Okay, so they ask Mr. Paint goes to ask Mr. Blackwhite to use his martial arts to make some ice. Right, so Mr. Blackwhite has this special martial arts where he puts a finger inside some water and can turn it into ice. All right, so they ask him to do that. He does that. Now, Mr. Blackwhite, this guy also loves something. He loves to play Go, right? The game of Go. He loves to play that. And then Wen Xian says that he knows some moves from a really famous mythical Go match, right? And he starts teaching these moves, and Mr. Blackwhite is all super impressed, and he's like, "Oh my god, these are really good moves." But Wen Xian doesn't show him all the moves, right? He's kind of being, secretive about it. He doesn't show him all the moves, and this kind of frustrates Mr. Blackwhite. And Mr. Blackwhite is like, "Okay, fine. What do you want, right? I know you want something because you're not showing me all the moves." And Wen Xian says, "I don't really want anything. I just want to make a bet, right? I want to make a bet that no one in this residence can beat Ling Hu Chong in sword arts." Okay. And the bet is that if Ling Hu Chong loses, then Wen Xian will give them this really beautiful painting that he has in his bag, right? I think he actually stole a bunch of this stuff to prepare for this plan, right? So, yeah. So if Ling Hu Chong loses, Wen Xian will give them this beautiful painting, and he will probably give Mr. Blackwhite all of the rest of the moves of the Go match, right? But we don't know. So we know that if they lose, they have to give them this painting, which isn't really that bad. But we don't know what happens if they win. I don't think they've said that yet. So yeah, that's what happened last week. How's that? Sort of like alcoholic who becomes a writer. Yeah, that's right. No, sushi can be cooked. It sure can. Yeah, have you had a lion roll, like a Lion King roll or something? I think that's what it's called, where they cook it. I don't know. I like raw sushi better, but I don't mind sometimes a cooked sushi. Ling Hu Chong has made another boob friend. Yep. Yes, he has. All right, let's do this. All right, chapter 19, The Wager, part 2. Old Tong, turned out your kung fu is so excellent. It's probably on par with mine, he praised. Fourth master must be joking. Aside from the skills in sword arts, the four masters of the Plum Manor are invincible in any other kind of kung fu. I, Tong Hua Jin, am just a nobody. How could I ever be compared to the fourth master? Xiang Wenqian replied. Why did you say aside from the skills in sword arts? Are you so sure that my swordsmanship is not up to his? Mr. Paint pulled a long face. Two masters, what do you think of this work of calligraphy? Xiang Wenqian let out a slight smile and then unrolled the other scroll, which turned out to be a piece of crazy grass style calligraphy with extremely cursive scripts. Oh, oh, oh! Mr. Paint cried out in surprise. After the 3-0, he suddenly shouted out at the top of his lungs. Third brother, the treasure of your life is here. The shout was so loud and explosive that even the walls, the windows, and the door jolted while dusts on top of the rafters and beams on the ceiling began falling. Additionally, the shout was so sudden that Ling Huchong was completely astounded. What's the fuss? A man asked from a distance. If you don't hurry up to take a look, once they put it away, you are gonna regret it for the rest of your life, Mr. Paint shouted. I found another counterfeit calligraphy work, haven't you? You've found another counterfeit calligraphy work, haven't you? The man outside replied. The portiere was raised and a man stepped into the room. This was a short and stout man, the top of his head completely bald without a single hair, which shined profusely under the light as though it had been polished. There was a big brush in his right hand and there were ink marks all over his robe. He walked closer to take a look at the calligraphy work, and suddenly his eyes became wide open, and he began breathing heavily. Okay, so this looks like the third brother, and he looks like he's a calligraphy guy. He loves calligraphy. Yeah, it looks like Xiang Wenqian came here very prepared. He had a thing, or he had a treasure for everyone, right, to entice every single person in the 4 playfellows. This is authentic. It really is the Willful Book by Zhang Su of the Tang Dynasty. It can't be fake, he muttered, his voice trembling. The strokes of the grass-style writing on the paper appeared unrestrained and extensive, as though a kung fu master was performing the martial arts of Qinggong, leaping up sometimes and bending low some other times, swift in the movement, yet exquisite in the poise. Out of each 10 characters, Ling Huchong could only recognize one at his best, but the many stamps of seals and postscripts at the bottom of the calligraphy book easily convinced him that this calligraphy artwork is no trivial matter. This is my third brother, Mr. Bald Brush, Mr. Paint introduced. He picked his name because calligraphy is his ultimate passion, and thousands of writing brushes had turned bald in his hands from practicing. It is not because he is bald-headed. Please don't confuse one with the other. Got it, Ling Huchong acknowledged with a smile. Reaching out with his right index finger, the man named Mr. Baldbrush stared at the willful book and began writing in the air, following the ticks and strokes in the calligraphy work, his mind completely embedded in his own world. Not only didn't he cast a single glance toward Xiang Wenqian or Ling Huchong, apparently he didn't even hear a word from Mr. Paints' introduction. Suddenly, Ling Huchong felt a shock in his heart. Brother Xiang must have planned this way beforehand. When I first met him in the roadside pavilion, he was already carrying this package behind his back, he thought to himself. But then he had a second thought. At that time, the package did not necessarily contain those 2 scrolls. Maybe along our journey, in order to get the 4 masters of the Plum Manor to treat my injury, he went outside and bought them, or even stole or snatched them when I was resting in the inn. He most likely stole them. Where can he find such invaluable artwork for sale anywhere? He could hear the slight sound made by strong energy force tearing through the air. When that Mr. Baldbrush wrote in the air with his finger, the powerful internal strength shown was in par with that of Mr. Blackwhite. My internal injury was caused by the Peach Valley's 6 fairies and Great Master No Commandment, he thought. It seems that the internal strength cultivation of the 3 Plum Manor Masters is no less than that of the Peach Valley's 6 fairies and Great Master No Commandment. The first Plum Manor Master might even be more powerful. Together with Brother Xiang, all 5 of them working together, they perhaps can heal my injury. I certainly hope it would not cost them great inner energy exhaustion. I have a great reading voice. Well, thank you so much. It's very nice of you to say. Xiang Wenxian did not wait for Mr. Baldbrush to finish. He quickly rolled the willful book back into a scroll and put it back into the package. Mr. Baldbrush stared at Xiang Wenxian in great disbelief. After a long while, he finally said, "What do you want in exchange?" "I don't want to exchange it for anything." Xiang Wenxian shook his head. "How about the 28 moves of Stone Drum, Acupoint, Hitting Brush, Kung Fu?" Mr. Baldbrush proposed. "No!" Mr. Blackwhite and Mr. Paint shouted in chorus. Remember, so he wants to trade his martial arts moves for the calligraphy book, right? And if you remember from last time, Mr. Paint also traded 3 of his moves for what? For some wine. Or some special way of making wine? Something like that. "Yes, why not? If I could use it in exchange for this genuine crazy grass work of Jiangsu, why should I feel pity for losing my Stone Drum Acupoint Hitting Brush Kung Fu?" Mr. Baldbrush disagreed. "No." Xiang Wenxian shook his head once again. Then why did you show it to me?" Mr. Baldbrush asked anxiously. Well, my mistake then. Third Master, just pretend you have never seen it before," Xiang Wenxian answered. "But I have seen it. How can I just pretend that I have never seen it?" Mr. Baldbrush rejected. "If Third Master really wants to acquire this genuine work of Changzhu, it's not difficult at all. All you have to do is accept our wager," Xiang Wenxian said. "What's the wager?" Mr. Baldbrush asked hurriedly. "Third brother," Mr. Paint cut in, "this mister here is a little bit out of his mind. He wants to make a wager that no one in our Plum Manor could beat the sword arts of this friend Feng from the Huashan school." "And what if someone could beat his sword arts? What then?" Mr. Baldbrush asked. "If someone in the Plum Manor, regardless of whom, can beat my brother Feng's long sword, then I'll give this genuine, willful book of Jiangsu away to the Third Master for free, and leave that authentic painting by Fan Quan, Traveler in Mount Brook, to Fourth Master as a gift. I'll also write down the 20 famous Go names, played by fairies, ghosts, and immortals that I've memorized, and give them to the Second Master," Xiang Wenxian explained. So he's baiting all of them, right, with some treasures. "How about our big brother? What are you giving to him?" Mr. Baldbrush asked. I have this music score of the Guangling song. Maybe the first master." "Guangling's song?" The 3 masters of the Plum Manor cried out all together before Xiang Wencan even finished his sentence. Ling Huchang also felt a shock. Wasn't it Elder Chu who found the Guangling song music score after digging through numerous ancient tombs and composed it into the Smiling Proud Wanderer's song? Where did Brother Xiang get it? He couldn't help but wonder. Then he realized Brother Xiang was the right counselor of the demon cult, and Elder Chu was elder of the demon cult. They were probably on friendly terms with each other, and when Elder Chu got hold of this music score in the Great Joy, he of course would tell Brother Xiang about it. If Brother Xiang had wanted to borrow it and make a copy, Elder Chu for sure wouldn't have any problem with it. At the thought that the music score was still present while the founder had perished, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Ever since Ji Kang died, the Guangling song had been lost forever. Brother Tong, aren't these words of yours a bit deceitful? Mr. Baldbrush shook his head in disbelief. I have an intimate friend who is obsessed with zither music. He said that everybody believes that after Ji Kang died, there is no more Guangling song under the sun. Undoubtedly, this music score had fallen into oblivion after the Western Jin dynasty. But what about before the Western Jin dynasty? Xiang Wenxian grinned. Mr. Baldbrush and the other two masters glanced at each other blankly. None could understand what Xian Wenxian's words meant. This friend of mine possesses extraordinary mentalities. Furthermore, he is not the kind who shies from committing all kinds of outrages. So he began excavating in famous pre-Jin dynasty zither players' tombs. A willful man will have his way. After digging through dozens of ancient tombs, he finally found the music score manuscripts in the tomb of Kai Ji, the famous musician of the Eastern Han dynasty. Both Mr. Baldbrush and Mr. Paint let out a slight cry of surprise. Mr. Blackwhite nodded slowly and exclaimed, Intelligent and courageous, extraordinary. Oh god, define portiere and oblivion. Portiere seems like a door, a doorway. Either a doorway, a door, or like one of those, what do you call those? One of those like cage doors, iron cages that drop down. I don't know what you call those, like on a doorway. Yeah, portiere. Portiere. Oh, it's just a curtain hung over a door or doorway. Ah, god damn it! It's not a door. It's a curtain. All right, that's one. That's one song. Oblivion? How did you define oblivion? It's like a void? Like when you... I think I know the word. When you die, you enter oblivion. Like, I'm gonna say a void or nothingness. Oblivion. A state of being unaware or unconscious of what is happening. That counts, right? A void? It says void. Ah, nothingness. Okay. I think that counts. Song count 1. Alright, so he has this music score, and he's using that to entice the biggest brother. The eldest brother, right? We haven't met him yet. Xiang Wenxian opened his package and then took out a booklet with the words Guangling Song Music Score written on the cover. He turned a few pages through it casually. Sure enough, it had music notes recorded in it. Brother Feng, Xiang Wenxian said after he handed the booklet to Ling Huchong, if anyone in the Plum Manor beats your sword arts, please give this music score to the first master of the Plum Manor. Ling Huchong took the booklet and placed it into his chest pocket. This could have been Elder Chu's relic. Since Elder Chu has passed away, what's so difficult if Brother Xian wanted to pick out this music score himself, he thought to himself. Remember, Elder Chu was the zither player who who made the Smiling Proud Wanderer song, right? And he died along with the other dude. Yeah. Brother Fang here is well accomplished in the art of wine. His sword skills must be just as excellent, but he is only a young man. It's hardly possible that within our Plum Manor... Isn't that a bit ridiculous? Mr. Paints grinned. If it is true that no one within our Plum Manor can overcome young hero Feng, what do we lose? Mr. Blackwhite asked. Although Ling Huchong had the agreement with Xiang Wenxian beforehand that he would let Xiang arrange everything, he didn't expect things to turn out this way, and felt that Xiang Wenxian had gone a bit too far. Weren't they here to ask for a healing treatment? How could they be so arrogant and belittling the hosts so much? Besides, he had lost all his inner strength. How could he be a match for these very capable masters of the Plum Manor? At that thought, he opened his mouth. Brother Tong always likes to make jokes. How dare I, an insignificant junior who lags greatly behind in the understanding of martial arts, deliberate sword arts, and exchange moves with the masters of the Plum Manor. These polite remarks are of course necessary, otherwise people would have called you a conceited swordsman, Xiang Wenxian said. Mr. Baldbrush didn't seem to have heard any of these words. Instead, he muttered, 3 drinks turns Xiang Su into sage of grass. Bearing his head before nobility, he showed no class. Wielding his writing brush, he pours clouds into papers in a blast. Second brother, Jiangsu was known as the Sage of Grass, the ultimate master in the grass-style calligraphy. This is how Du Fu wrote about him in the poem 8 Drinking Saints' Song. He was also one of the 8 Drinking Saints. Just by looking at the willful book, you can probably imagine how he waved his writing brush about after drinking to his heart's content. Oh, it is so powerful and unstrained that a heavenly steed soaring across the skies. Just brilliant, just brilliant. Yep, if he likes to drink, then he must be an awesome guy. And of course, the stuff he writes can't be bad at all, Mr. Paints agreed. Han Yu also wrote about Jiangsu in his poem Joy, Anger, Shame, or Uneasiness, Depression, Sorrow, Happiness, or Leisure, Hatred, or Aspiration. Inebriated and tipsy, when discontent is felt in the heart, he let it flow through his writing brush in grass style. They're all reciting like poems and stuff. This mister and we are just of the same kind. When discontent is felt in the heart, let it flow in writing the grass style. As if with a flick of the sword, happy we become. Oh wait. Oh shit. Wait, that was Mr. Baldbrush talking. Mr. Baldbrush continued. Raising his finger once again, he began writing in the air. After a few strokes, he said to Xiang Wentan, "Hey, come on, let me take another look." Xiang Wentan shook his head. Once third master wins the contest, this calligraphy book would have been yours. There is no need to be impatient, he grinned. Define belittling? Belittling means like you're insulting. You're putting down someone. You're belittling them. I'm pretty sure that's right. I'm very sure that's right. Belittle. Yeah, it makes something seem unimportant. Denigrate. Disparage. Xiang Wenxian shook his head. Wait. Mr. Blackwhite was an expert in gamesmanship and always had careful consideration of the overall situation. Before thinking about winning, he was already considering the consequences of a defeat. If one within the Plum Manor could defeat Brother Feng's sword arts, what kind of stakes would we be losing? He inquired again. We have come to the Plum Manor with no intent for any favor or any item. All Brother Feng wants is to come to the ultimate summit of world martial arts and have the opportunity to exchange the understandings of sword arts with the best martial artists in this world. If, with any luck, we end up winning the contest, we'll turn around and leave right away without asking for any stake from you. Xiang Wenxiang answered. I see. This hero Feng has come for fame. Defeating the 4 playfellows of Jianan in succession will indeed gain him great fame in the martial world, Mr. Black-White said. Second Master, you've thought it wrong, Xiang Wenxiang replied as he shook his head. After today's sword contest in the Plum Manor, regardless of who the winner is, if even one word about it leaks out, Brother Feng and I will stand condemned by heaven, and we are no better than dogs' droppings. Good, I like your frankness, Mr. Paint remarked. This room here is very spacious. Let me exchange a few moves with Brother Feng. Right here, then. Brother Feng, where is your sword? We are not bold enough to bring weapons to the Plum Manor, Xiang Wenxiang replied with a smile. Bring me 2 swords, Mr. Paint shouted out. Define inebriated. Inebriated is drunk. Like you're buzzed, you're drunk. Export. Export means like, the opposite of import. Like give out to the world. Like selling something or giving something out. That's too easy, guys. That's too easy. Someone answered from outside the room, and soon Ding Jian and Xu Lingwei returned. These were the people who met them at the front door, right? So these were kind of the servants, but these 2 are also, I guess, good martial artists in their own right. But in this place, they're just basically servants or assistants, whatever. So each holding a sword with both hands. Walking in front of Mr. Paint, they bowed and presented the swords. Picking up the sword from Ding Jian's hands, Mr. Paint said to Xu Lingwei, Give that sword to him. Yes, Xu Lingwei acknowledged and then walked in front of Ling Hucheng, holding the sword high with both hands. Feeling very embarrassed about this entire matter, Ling Hucheng turned his head and glanced at Xiang Wenxiang. The 4th Master of the Plum Manor has reached the acme in the understanding of sword arts. Brother Feng, even if you could only learn one move or one technique from him, you would still benefit from it the rest of your life, Xiang Wenxiang affirmed. Ling Hucheng knew that under the current circumstance, this sword contest had become inevitable. Having no other alternative, he took the sword with both hands, bowing slightly. Search it inebriated. You don't think? Oh, come on. It means drunk. See? Drunk, intoxicated. You don't believe me? You don't trust me? You don't trust me, Yu Hinsam? Acme means peak. The peak. So the acme of perfection means the peak of perfection. Hold it, 4th brother, Mr. Black-White spoke up suddenly. This Brother Tong here has put up a wager that no one in our Plum Manor can defeat Brother Feng. Ding Jian also knows how to use a sword, and he is also part of the Plum Manor. You don't necessarily have to do it yourself. The more confident Xiang Wenxiang sounded, the more worried he became. So he decided to let Ding Jian take the challenge first and test the waters. He knew that Ding Jian possessed excellent skills in sword arts. Besides, Ding was only a servant in the Plum Manor. Even if Ding lost the fight, there would have been no harm done to the great name of the Plum Manor. And with this test, they would be able to tell how good or bad this Feng Zhang's skills in sword arts actually were. Sure. As long as a person from the Plum Manor defeats my brother Feng's sword arts, it counts as our defeat. It doesn't have to be the four masters themselves. Brother Ding here has earned the nickname Straight Line Lightning Sword in the martial world. His sword moves are so fast. Such speed is rarely seen in the world. Brother Feng, it would be good for you if you check out the Brother Ding's Straight Line Lightning Sword first. Xiang Wenxian did not object. Mr. Paint tossed his long sword toward Ding Jian. If you lose, you'll be going to Turpan to transport wine for me as your punishment, he grinned. Ding Jian caught the long sword with a blow. With a blow? I think they mean with a bow, and turned toward Ling Huchong. Ding Jian here. Thanks, Mr. Feng, for the chance of the sword match, he said. A short ring echoed as he drew his sword. Ling Huchong also drew his sword and set the sheath on the stone table. Three masters. Brother Ding, this is a contest of sword arts, so there's no need to compete in the inner strength department. Xiang Wenxiang spoke up again. Of course, both sides will know when to stop, Mr. Black-White commented. Brother Feng, Xiang Wenxiang turned to Ling Huchong. You have to promise to not use any inner strength in the match. We are having a contest of sword arts. The one with fine and intimate moves wins the match, and the one with crude and sluggish moves loses it. The inner energy cultivation method of your Huashan school is very well known in the martial world. If you use your inner strength to achieve victory, then it counts as our defeat. He's very smart, right? Because Ling Huchong has no inner strength left, right? Because of his sickness. So of course, he can't use any chi, any inner strength. So Xiang Wenxiang is like, well, in this contest, you don't use inner strength. You can't use inner strength. If you do, then you lose. So he has just eliminated Ling Huchong's greatest weakness from the fight. Ling Huchong almost laughed at these words. He thought to himself, Brother Xiang knew very well that I don't have any bits of inner strength. He is using these words to trick them. So he said, if I use my inner strength, for sure the three masters, Brother Ding and Brother Shi, will laugh their teeth off. I certainly dare not to use any bit of it. We've come to the Plum Manor with complete sincerity. If Brother Feng keep sticking to etiquette and being too modest, that would be disrespectful to the four senior masters. Everyone in the martial world knows that the divine art of Violet Twilight of your Huashan school is far superior to the inner strength cultivation method of our Songshang school. Brother Feng, why don't you stand in these two footprints of mine when you spar with Brother Ding and make sure you don't move your feet? After these words, Xiang Wenxian took a few steps aside, and two footprints, each almost 2 inches deep, appeared on two bricks on the floor. It turned out that while he was speaking, he had shifted his inner strength to his feet and stamped 2 footprints on the bricks with sheer force. Excellent Kung Fu! Mr. Black-White, Mr. Bald Brush, and Mr. Paint cheered in chorus. Seeing how Xiang Wenxian had shifted his inner strength to the bottom of his feet as he spoke without turning a hair, and there was not a single broken brick piece in the footprints he created, while the depths of the 2 footprints were exactly identical, and the footprints were so smooth as though someone had carved it out carefully, they could tell that Xiang Wenxian's inner strength had reached an incredible level, which was way above the inner strength level of their own. They all thought that Xiang Wenxian was just showing off his inner strength, although such an affected performance appeared shallow, not something a true martial arts master would have done. His amazing inner strength cultivation was still very admirable. None had a clue that Xiang Wenxian actually had profound meaning in his action. Ling Huchong had no problem understanding Xiang Wenxian's behavior. Xiang had been propagating that his inner strength cultivation was superior to that of Xiang's. If Xiang's inner strength had been so extraordinary, then his could only have been more formidable. And then when the match started, his opponents would not be bold enough to use inner strength against him, fearing of bringing disgrace to oneself. Besides, except for the skills in sword arts, he was no good in any other kung fu skills, and leaping and springing about were certainly not his good qualities. By standing in the two footprints and only using sword arts in the spar, he could easily hide his inadequacy. When Ding Jian heard Xiang Wenxian suggesting Ling Huchong to have the sword fight with him while standing still in the two footprints, he couldn't help but feel greatly annoyed by the obvious contempt. But the profound inner strength Xiang Wenxian showed by leaving footprints on bricks also astounded him. If they are bold enough to challenge our four masters, they could not have been ordinary. If I can get a draw out of the fight, I would have made a great contribution to the plum manor of the Lone Hill, he thought to himself. He used to be an extremely arrogant swordsman in former years, but later he encountered a very formidable enemy. He was taken prisoner and was put through many torments. Fortunately, the four playfellows of Jianan rescued him and set him free. That was when he decided to join the Plum Manor and willingly took on the job of a servant. After so many years, the fierceness and boldness inside him had almost died out completely. Brother Ding, please. Ling Huchong stepped into the footprints made by Xiang Wenxian and said with a smile, Please, excuse my lack of manners. Ding Jian apologized. He brandished his long sword transversely, and suddenly a long white flash shot across everyone's eyes like a lightning, accompanied by the slight sound of the blade cutting through the air. Although he had been living in seclusion in the Plum Manor for over 10 years, his kung fu skills had not declined a bit. The sword art he used was named the Straight Line Lightning Sword Art, and every time when a move in the sword art form was executed, it looked as though a lightning had just shot across the sky. The dazzling effect was so dramatic that it would have easily stunned the opponent and put fear in his heart. The formidable enemy that had once defeated him was a blind loner robber. Because the man was completely blind and used his hearing to detect Ding Jian's sword moves, the awe-inspiring atmosphere created by the straight line lightning sword had no effect on him. At this moment, when he put the sword art to good use, suddenly the entire room had been filled with the dazzling lightning flares. Wait, so every sword move, every slash and every cut, there's like looks like a lightning flash. Define transversely. Transverse? I think it means horizontally. Transversely. Horizontally. Come on. Come on. Transverse. Transverse. Crossways? Diagonally? Horizontal? Diagonal and horizontal? Extending across something. It could be horizontal, right? I think he's like this. He takes the sword and goes like this. Because I've seen them do that in movies before. Dun dun dun. You want to look some more? Transversely. Crosswise. Line extending across or in a cross direction. Yeah, right? I don't know. I think that's fine. Does that work? It means across, so you wouldn't count it because it's not being used in the right context. So you don't count it? All right, you guys are a tough crowd. Tough crowd. Tough crowd. All right, that's 2 songs. That's 2 songs. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. I think I'm right. I think I'm right. You just go like this. Just unsheath your sword like that. All right, let's see what this guy with the lightning sword does. But only after the first move of the straight line lightning sword was put to display, Ling Huchong had identified 3 major flaws in the sword art. Ling Jian didn't rush with his attack and simply waved his sword about as though he was showing a good amount of manners to a guest of the manor, when in truth he really intended to dazzle and slacken Ling Huchong so he would not be able to withstand the sharp attacking moves following behind. By the time Ling Jian was on his 5th move, Ling Huchong had already counted a total of 18 flaws in his sword moves. So he's like an expert now, okay? Because of his martial arts training, he can see all of the anything bad about the other opponent's martial arts. He can just spot right away. "Excuse me," he said as he thrust his longsword out at an oblique angle. At the moment, Ling Jian was in the middle of sweeping his sword from the left to the right in a rapid swing. Although the blade of Ling Huchong's sword was still 2 feet and 6 inches from his wrist, but the swing would have sent his own wrist toward the naked blade, and since the sweep was too rapid and carried too much strength, it was already impossible to take it back. "Look out!" the 5 bystanders called out in unison, as if by prior agreement. Mr. Blackwhite happened to be holding 2 game pieces, one black and one white, in his palm. Just when he was about to shoot them at Ling Huchong's longsword to save Ling Jian's hand from being cut off, a thought popped into his head. "If I help Ling Jian out by interfering with the contest, that would make the fight 2 against 1. And then clearly the Plum Manor would have lost the match, and there would be no need for any further contest." Amid his hesitancy, Ling Jian's wrist had swept toward the sword blade speedily, while Xu Lingwei uttered a loud cry of panic. Hey Linfamy, can we know who's that lucky guy who's your editor? He's just a dude. I don't think you know him. Yeah, there's no reason that you would know him. He's a guy, he lives in London. He lives in the UK. He's pretty good, right? Yeah. We've been working together for a couple of videos now. He's pretty good. I like it. I like it. Alright, so let's continue with this fight. So many interruptions. At the fraction of the second, Ling Huchong turned his wrists gently, turning the blade of the sword sideways. With a light clap, Ling Jian's wrist hit the flat side of the sword, and to all the audience's pleasant surprise, his wrist didn't suffer even the slightest damage. Only after a short daze did Ling Jian realize that his opponent had really shown great leniency. Within that fraction of a second, he had been fortunate enough to keep his hand. If his wrist had been cut, all his kung fu skills would have been ruined. Covered with cold sweat, he bowed down deeply. "I am utterly grateful for the mercy Hero Feng had shown with his sword." "I don't really deserve it," Ling Huchong also bowed back. Witnessing how Ling Huchong had turned his longsword to spare Ling Jian from bloodshed, Mr. Blackwhite, Mr. Baldbrush, and Mr. Paint all felt their favor toward Ling Huchong growing rapidly. Mr. Paint poured a cup with wine and then raised it with both hands. "Brother Feng, your sword skills are marvelous. Here's a toast for you," he said. "You flatter me," Ling Huchong replied. Taking the wine cup from Mr. Paint, he drank it up. Mr. Paint also drank a cup of wine in a company. Filling the wine cup in Ling Huchong's hands again, he said, "Brother Feng, you are a man with great mercy and spared Ling Jian's hand. That calls for another toast. It was just a coincidence. There's nothing to it, Ling Huchang answered, and drank up his wine, crossing the cup with both hands, holding the cup with both hands. After drinking a cup in a company, Mr. Paint filled the cup once again. Let's hold on to the third cup here, shall we? Let's have our play first, and whoever loses the match will have to drink the third cup as his penalty, he said. I'll be losing that match naturally. Why don't I drink it first? Ling Huchang showed a big grin. No hurry, no hurry. Mr. Paint shook his hand in disapproval. Setting the wine cup onto the stone table, he grabbed the long sword from Ling Jian's hands. Brother Feng, you go first. At the time of the first 2 cups of wine, Ling Huchang had already been deliberating inwardly. He claims that he is addicted to, firstly, the art of wine, secondly, the art of painting, and thirdly, the art of the sword, that his skills in the sword art had to be very exceptional. Judging from that celestial beings painting of his at the reception hall, the strokes are no doubt swift and fierce. However, it seems that he had some problem disciplining himself. If his sword moves are comparable to his painting techniques, then they must have many flaws. Bowing down respectfully, he said, Fourth Master, I beg for your clemency. Don't be too modest. Go ahead, show your moves, Mr. Paint said. Yes, Ling Huchang answered. Raising his long sword, he thrust it at Mr. Paint's shoulder. The thrust was both skewed and tremulous. It obviously carried no strength, nor did it follow any methodical sword art principles. There simply could not have had a sword move like this amongst all possible sword arts in the entire world. What the heck is this? Mr. Paint cried out, astounded. Since he knew that Ling Huchang was a member of the Huashan Sword School, he had been pondering over the many sword art forms of the Huashan School in his mind. Who would have thought that when the first move was shown, it was nothing like it? Not only wasn't it a move from the Huashan style sword arts, it couldn't even be called a sword move. Ever since Ling Huchang studied the art of the sword from Feng Qingyang, he not only learned the world prominent Dugu 9 swords, but also grasped the overcoming a move without a move, the ultimate gist in the art of the sword. This gist and the theory behind it, the Dugu 9 swords supplement each other. Though the profoundness and subtlety of the Dugu 9 swords had reached the extreme as a sword art form, it contained moves and techniques, after all, which were still traceable. But once one applied the principle of overcoming a move without a move to it, it became even more volatile and unpredictable, leaving no mark for the opponent to fathom. Therefore, when Ling Huchang made the thrust, Mr. Paint was immediately stunned, not knowing what would be the right way to block it with his own sword. Very confused, he took 2 paces back to dodge it. When Ling Huchang made Ding Jian threw down his sword and gave in with only 1 move, although Mr. Black-White and Mr. Baldbrush both praised Ling Huchang's sword skills inwardly, neither of them found the result surprising, thinking that if he was bold enough to challenge the Plum Manor, it would have been ridiculous if he couldn't even defeat a servant of the Plum Manor. After seeing how Mr. Paint was forced to retreat 2 steps by his first thrust, they found themselves astounded. After retreating 2 paces back, Mr. Paint charged 2 paces forward right away. Ling Huchang sent another thrust out with his longsword, this time aiming at the upper left side of Mr. Paint's body. This thrust was again just a random thrust that did not follow any of the general sword art principles. Mr. Paint wanted to fend it off with a side swing of his sword, but before the 2 swords even collided, he immediately realized that the opponent's sword tip had shifted into a slanting angle, pointing toward the lower right costal region. It was wide open, and if the opponent took advantage of this weakness in defense, the situation would be beyond redemption. That meant the block would be very unwise. In desperation, he changed his move instantly. With a quick push to the ground, he sprang backward over 10 feet. Excellent sword skills, he shouted out and charged forward once again without any delay, putting his entire weight behind the sword. He drove the blade toward Ling Huchang in great speed. This was a thrust with overwhelming power. Noticing an obvious flaw at Mr. Paint's bending right arm, Ling Huchang swung the longsword in no time and chopped toward his right elbow. If Mr. Paint did not change his move midway, then his right elbow would be cut off before he could incur any damage to his opponent. But Mr. Paint was a true swordsman with great skills. In the great hurry, he quickly lowered his wrist and thrust his sword at the floor. Relying on the counter force from the floor, he flipped backward and landed steadily in over 20 feet. So you see what's going on. Every time, for every move, this guy had to jump backwards, right? He didn't really engage Ling Huchong in any sword moves. He just every time Ling Huchong did a move, he just jumped backwards. At this time, his back was only a few inches from the wall. If he had used a little bit more strength when he executed the backflip, his back would have collided with the wall, which would have undoubtedly put a big dent on his reputation as a martial arts grandmaster. But even so, the escape was simply too awkward, and his face showed some slight purplish red from the rush. Being an open-minded and a generous person, Mr. Paint laughed out instead. Raising his left thumb, he uttered, "Excellent sword skills!" Waving his long sword vigorously, he launched a move. White Aurora shooting the sun, which was then changed to willow wickers fluttering in the spring breeze, which in turn changed to the mounting flood dragon and the soaring phoenix. The three moves were completed without any let-up. It looked as though he didn't ever move his feet. But once the three moves were executed, the tip of his long sword had reached Ling Huchong's face. Ling Huchong tilted his sword and smacked down gently the flat side of his sword, pushing down against the middle ridge of Mr. Paint's long sword. The gentle smack was executed with such accuracy in its positioning and timing. At that exact moment when Mr. Paint thrust his sword forward, his strength and energy were all concentrating on the tip of the sword, and the middle ridge of the sword carried no weight. It carried no strength at all. As a light clank echoed, the long sword in his hand sank helplessly. Ling Huchong snapped his wrist gently and sent his long sword forward, pointing directly at Mr. Paint's solar plexus. "Ah!" Mr. Paint cried out and leapt to the left. Holding his left hand into a sword finger form, he charged forward, waving the long sword in his right hand fiercely. This time he resorted to forceful hacks and chops, bringing his sword swishing down through the air. "Watch out!" he shouted. He didn't really want to injure Ling Huchong, but this strike, named Jade Dragon hanging upside down, was extremely swift and fierce. If the opponent had overlooked it and he couldn't rein in his own force in time, he was afraid that the strike might actually wound the opponent. "Got it," Ling Huchong acknowledged as he poked his long sword upward. With a slight rustle, the edge of his sword sliced upward right next to the side of Mr. Paint's sword. If Mr. Paint followed through with a sword strike before his blade could reach Ling Huchong's head, his 5 fingers holding his longsword would have been sliced off first. As he watched his opponent's longsword sliding upward against his own blade, a move that could not be countered. Having no other alternative, he struck down heavily with his left palm. The energy shot out from his palm hit the floor with a loud boom, and utilizing the counter force, he leapt backward and landed over 10 feet away. Before he even recomposed into a firm stance, he had drew 3 circles in front of him with his long sword, which magically changed into 3 circles of light. The 3 circles of light looked as though they had actually materialized. After freezing in the air for a moment, they began moving toward Ling Huchong gradually. At the first look, these sword energy-turned circles of light did not appear as swift or fierce as the straight-line lightning sword, but the energy released easily filled the entire room and everyone felt the chilling force coming from them. Ling Huchong extended his long sword and then sliced out from the left side of the light circle with an inclined angle, which was exactly an energy gap when the power from Mr. Paint's first move was just about to die, and then the power from the second move was just about to be released. "Oh?" Mr. Paint uttered and retreated. The light circles made from the sword energy also retreated together with him. But all of a sudden, the light circles shrank briefly before growing into enormous shapes rapidly and gushing speedily toward Ling Huchong. Ling Huchong shook his wrist and thrust out his long sword. Once again, with another cry of surprise, Mr. Paint leapt away in a hurry. Thus, with numerous quick charging forwards and quick retreats, within moments Mr. Paint had attacked with 11 moves and retreated 11 times. By then, the reflections from his sword had grown severely from the accelerated attacks and painted a layer of blue on his face. His beard and mustache also looked as though they were all standing on their ends from the tense atmosphere. Amid a loud roar from Mr. Paint, dozens of light circles, some big and some small, shot toward Ling Huchong at the same time. This was the very peak of perfection in his sword art, with which he had combined dozens of sword moves into one. Every single one of the dozens of sword moves contained fierce killer techniques, and each move had several variations. Once combined, the complexity was simply unrivaled. Resisting complexity with simplicity, Ling Huchong squatted slightly and prodded his sword tip up from under the dozens of light circles, pointing directly at Mr. Paint's lower stomach. With another loud cry, Mr. Paint leapt backward with all his strength. Bang! He sat heavily on the stone table from the fall. Next, several clatters echoed as the wine cups on the stone table fell to the floor from the sudden shake and smashed to pieces. Marvelous! Marvelous! Mr. Paint broke into a loud laughter. Brother Feng, your skills in this art of the sword are much, much better than mine. Come, 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 I propose 3 toasts for you. Ah, he beat him. Alright. Let's take a break, guys. I think I've been reading for a while. Take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back, okay? Alright. It looks like Ling Huchong won his first fight, okay? Decidedly, actually. Like, he had no problem with it. And it looks like the guy did use chi energy. Like, that. The friggin', like, the energy balls or the energy circles that he made in the air, that's not just sword art, right? That's like using your chi, which he wasn't supposed to do, I think. But yeah. So remember, this is like one of the best martial artists in the world, and Ling Huchong just beat him. Now, obviously, he didn't. The contest was skewed in Ling Huchong's favor, right? Because you're not supposed to use any inner energy. You're supposed to use martial arts. But yeah, but his sword skills are like better than this guy who's among one of the best. Yeah, 6 is right. You have to be suicidal to actually win. With the Dooku 9 swords, there's no defense. It's just offense. It's all offense. So yeah. So if the opponent was suicidal and was willing to hurt himself to kill the other guy, then Ling Wuchang might lose, right? But most people don't want to die, so this art of just only offense is really effective. Mr. Blackwhite and Mr. Baldbrush knew very well about their fourth brother's attainments in the art of the sword, but without ever stepping out of the footprints made by Xiang Wenxian, Ling Huchong successfully forced Mr. Paint back 18 times during his 16 attacking moves. The incredible sword skills Miss Ling Huchong had shown here were both admirable and frightening. Mr. Paint filled the wine cups and drank 3 cups together with Ling Huchong. Among the 4 playfellows of Jiangnan, my kung fu is the weakest. Although I admit my defeat, second brother and third brother won't admit theirs. Probably they'll want to check you out themselves, he said. We did exchange many moves, but fourth master didn't lose in any one of them. How can we conclude the match with a winner? Ling Huchong disagreed. I lost after the first move. The rest of the 17 moves were all unnecessary. Big Brother says I need to improve my demeanor. He is absolutely right. Mr. Paint shook his head. Fourth Master's demeanor is in very high standard, just like your tolerance of wine is also in very high standard, Ling Hu Chong said with a smile. Yeah, let's drink some more, Mr. Paint grinned. He sure loves wine. Being a man who thought highly of himself in the art of the sword, Mr. Paint didn't have a single trace of irritation after losing to a not well known at all junior swordsman. The negligent and open-minded grace he had shown was undoubtedly first class. Both Xiang Wenxian and Ling Hu Chong felt great admiration for him. Sure. Will you please go and get me my bald brush? Wait, there's a bald brush guy. Sure. Will you please go and get me my bald brush? Mr. Bald Brush said to Xu Lingwei. Xu Lingwei answered and went out. Soon he returned with a weapon, and then presented the weapon to Mr. Baldbrush with both hands respectfully. Ling Hu Chong took a look at it, which turned out to be a judge's pen, 1 foot and 6 inches in length, cast in fine steel. A judge's pen is a kind of a weapon. Judge's pen. Yeah, the metal thing. I don't know how you fight with this thing. It seems like you're more likely to hurt yourself. But yeah, look at this dude. Look at that guy. Oh yeah. So Mr. Baldbrush fights with these things. 1 foot and 6 inches in length, cast in fine steel. The funny thing was that there was actually a bundle of wool, still with ink tied to the end of the judge's pen, as though it was a real brush used for writing. For ordinary judge's pens, the head section was used to seal the enemy's acupoints, but this pen here used a soft lamb wool as the pen's head. When it was used to strike people's acupoints, how could it help in defeating the enemy in a real battle? Ling Hu Chong figured that Mr. Baldbrush must know some special kind of kung fu. Besides, he must possess very resourceful inner strength, so as soon as the inner energy is released, even lamb wool could be used to wound the enemy. He has good taste in weapons? I guess he does. It fits his behavior, or it fits his attitude and demeanor too. He's also a calligrapher, so yeah, he uses it as a brush. Brother Feng, are you still going to stay in those 2 footprints? Taking the judge's pen into his hand, Mr. Baldbrush asked with a grin. Ling Hu Chong took 2 steps back at once. I dare not. I am a junior, asking pointers from a senior master. How dare I be overconfident? He bowed. There you go, Mr. Paint nodded. When you had the sword contest with me, it was okay for you to stay put, but to fight my 3rd brother, that wouldn't be wise. Mr. Baldbrush raised the judge's pen and smiled. My stroke forms are all created from variations of famous calligraphy artists' masterpieces. Brother Feng is a man well versed in both polite letters and martial arts. I am sure you can easily recognize the way of my judge's pen moves. Brother Feng is a good friend, therefore I won't dip this bald brush in ink. Ling Hu Chong was slightly taken aback, thinking to himself, if he didn't consider me a good friend, then he would have dipped his brush in ink. What's going to happen if he does dip his brush in ink? He was unaware that the ink Mr. Baldbrush dipped his brush in during real combats was actually made from stewing a very special medicinal materials, and after the ink got onto one's skin, the color would imprint deeply under the skin and could never be removed, whether by washing or scraping with a knife. In the former years when martial arts masters had fought the 4 playfellows of Jiangnan, Mr. Baldbrush had been the one giving them the most headaches. If anyone had not been extra careful, he would end up with a circle, a cross, or even a word or two written on his face by Mr. Baldbrush, and then the rest of his life would have been completely ruined. People would rather take a hack or even lose an arm than having him draw things on their faces, only because Mr. Baldbrush saw how Ling Huchong showed great leniency in his match against Ding Jian and Mr. Paint had he decided not to dip his brush in ink. Oh. So his ink is like tattoo, so he can fight and during the fight he can just write shit on your face. and you have like the word shit on your face, tattooed on your face for the rest of your life. Even though Ling Huchong had no idea what Mr. Baldbrush had meant, he figured that it must have been some kind of good intention, so he bowed. Many thanks for the great kindness. Unfortunately, I'm not very literate. I'm sure I won't be able to recognize third masters' brush strokes. Mr. Baldbrush was slightly disappointed. You don't know calligraphy? He said. Okay, let me explain it to you first. The stroke form I am about to use is called General Pei Poem, which transformed from Yan Zhenqing's calligraphy book. There are a total of 23 characters, and each character contains between 3 and 16 moves. Now listen carefully. General Pei, the great lord that ruled the 6 directions, the valiant general that guarded peace in the 9 fields, his war horse was valorous as the dragon or tiger, galloping above the high mound with grand and heroic spirit. What does that mean? Thanks for the guidance, Ling Huchong replied, but inwardly he thought, can you explain about the poem or the calligraphy? Wait, you can explain about the poem or the calligraphy all you want. I know nothing about them anyhow. Mr. Baldbrush swung the big pen and pecked 3 times toward Ling Huchong's left cheek. These were none other than the first 3 strokes of the character Pei. These 3 pecks were actually fake moves. Raising his big pen high in the air, he was just about to delineate down from the top when Ling Huchong suddenly thrust his longsword out in a preemptive strike and stabbed toward his right shoulder. Mr. Baldbrush was forced into holding his big pen crosswise to block the strike, but by then Ling Huchong had already retracted his sword. Their 2 weapons did not collide with each other. Both moves turned out to be fakes. But Mr. Baldbrush was only able to execute half of the first move of the General Pei form and couldn't complete it. After blocking only to thin air, Mr. Baldbrush immediately launched the second move. Before the head of the pen had a chance to strike forward, Ling Huchong had already thrust at another spot, where he had no alternative but to defend. Without delay, Mr. Baldbrush swung his pen backward to fend it off, but Ling Huchong had retracted his longsword once again, and Mr. Baldbrush's second wave terminated again, only halfway through. Right from the beginning, Mr. Baldbrush's 2 moves were both interrupted midway through. Not able to complete the pen form he was very proud of, Mr. Baldbrush couldn't help but feel quite annoyed, as though a calligrapher had just picked up his brush to write. But only a few strokes into it, a naughty kid began catching his pen holder or pulling his arms and prevented him from finishing writing a character smoothly. I have already read the entire poem of General Pei Poem to him beforehand. He knows the order of my strokes and is able to predict my moves and stop me ahead of time. I'd better not follow the order of the characters with my later moves, Mr. Baldbrush thought inwardly. After a fake dot, the big pen curved downward from the upper right corner to the lower left corner with abundant strength, writing the character as in the grass style. But Ling Huchong quickly pushed his long sword forward and pointed at his right rib cage. Astounded, Mr. Baldbrush reversed the movement of the judge's pen and smashed it toward Ling Huchong's long sword, and would have expected that this stab of who would have expected that this stab of Ling Huchong's was not a real stab. All he really did was just showing the posture, but once again Mr. Baldbrush was only able to execute half of his move. With this grass-style stroke, he had put out a great amount of energy and strength, when suddenly the movement was redirected. Not only did the stroke become stagnant, his internal strength was also forced to reroute. which stirred up quite some energy disruption inside his lower stomach and caused indescribable discomfort. After taking a deep breath, he waved his judge's pen rapidly in an attempt to finish the galloping move, but only halfway through it he was forced to retract his judge's pen in defense by Ling Huchong's attack just as usual. Mr. Baldbrush was greatly irritated. "Hey chap, stop putting sand in the wheels," he bellowed as he accelerated his judge's pen's movements. But no matter how he sprang left and right, transforming his moves, he was only able to ride up to the second stroke with each character before being forced to stop by Ling Huchong's sword strikes. Mr. Baldbrush uttered a loud roar, and suddenly the writing style changed completely. Before, the flow of the strokes was free and unrestrained. Now the strokes turned thick and heavy, with the vigor passing through the center, while the cutting edge appeared blustering and aggressive. The strokes looked straightforward, yet grand at the same time. Ling Huchong, of course, had no way of knowing that this stroke form was inspired by the calligraphy book Mount Ba Meng Maxim, written by the famous Shu general Zhang Fei. But he also noticed the dramatic change in the writing style. He couldn't care less as to what move his opponent was using, and every time, as soon as he saw the judge's pen move, he would attack its flaw. Mr. Baldbrush croaked in frustration, but regardless of his movements, he was only able to execute half of his move and never succeeded in completing the full move. Suddenly, Mr. Baldbrush's writing style changed again and began writing the grass style in Hua Su's self-stating book. Now the strokes flutters in all directions and the flow of the writing became unpredictable. Hua Su's grass style calligraphy by itself was already very difficult to read. Now I am adding even more grass scripts to the grass style. I bet this chap won't be able to recognize this self-made grass scripts of mine, he thought to himself. Yeah, Drift, he's doing air calligraphy. Doing calligraphy in the air. Yeah. And he thinks that Ling Huchong knows the poems. Right? So he thinks that Ling Huchong knows the poems and he predicts where he's going to attack. And then he stops, and Ling Huchong is stopping him from attacking because he knows the poems. So he's like he's combining all his calligraphy and making it so that it's hard to read. But Ling Huchong isn't actually reading his calligraphy, right? Ling Huchong doesn't know all of these poems. He's just exploiting the flaws in this guy's attacks. Hey Tim, thanks for the super chat. I appreciate it very much. You think you might want to see the footnotes on this chapter? There's like 21 footnotes. That's a lot of notes. I think it's just they're just describing these poem books. How could he have known that Ling Huchong couldn't even read many characters written in the square-shaped regular scripts, not even mentioning the unrestrained grass scripts? He had assumed that the only reason Ling Huchong succeeded in predicting his movements and stopping him ahead of time was because Ling Huchong had been able to read his writing, when in fact all Ling Huchong saw in his eyes were weapon moves and forms, and his successful striking to the cracks all attributed to attacking the flaws in the opponent's moves. Even with the crazy grass style, Mr. Baldbrush still could go only as far as half a move with each of his moves. Feeling the indignation growing rapidly inside his chest, he suddenly shouted out loudly, "No more fight! No more fight!" Leaping backward, he picked that barrel of grape wine Mr. Paint had brought along and poured the wine onto the stone table. Dipping his big pen in the wine, he began writing on the white wall. It was none other than General Pei poem. All 23 characters appeared full of passion, especially the character As, which looked as though it could have flown off the wall any minute. After finishing off the writing, Mr. Baldbrush finally let out a breath of relief. Turning his head sideways slightly, he admired the large characters on the white wall in dark red color and laughed out loudly. Wonderful! Among my lifelong artworks, this one is the finest, he concluded. The more he looked at it, the prouder he became. So, yeah, this guy is a true calligrapher, right? He kept trying to write this poem, but he couldn't, right? And he kept getting interrupted. So he got really annoyed because he really wanted to write these poems. So he had to stop the fight and actually write them to release his anger or release his frustrations and write the actual poem out loud. Second brother, can I take this game room from you? I'd hate to part with this calligraphy work. I am afraid that I'll never be able to write anything as good in the rest of my life, he requested. Fine, Mr. Blackwhite answered. Other than the stone table, there's nothing else in this room anyway. Even if you don't want it, I'd have to move all the same. How can I ever focus on the game of Go while facing the vigorous calligraphy of yours every day? Mr. Baldbrush stared at the several lines of calligraphy and wagged his head back and forth, feeling very pleased of himself. Even if the revered Mr. Yan was reborn, I am afraid he wouldn't be able to write something like this. He praised himself. Turning his head toward Ling Huchong, he said, Hey buddy, it's all thanks to you for keeping my ardors inside my belly until it was filled to the point of bursting. And then all of a sudden they poured out from my heart through my hand and enabled me to create such splendid and unparalleled work under heaven. Your sword skills are excellent, and my calligraphy skills are also excellent. This is called Each Has His Specialty, and no winner can be claimed in this match. Exactly. Each has his specialty, and no winner can be claimed in this match, Xiang Wenjian agreed. Moreover, it was also because of my excellent wine, Mr. Paint added. This third brother of mine is as innocent and artless as a child. Please note that he is simply crazy about calligraphy. It's not that he does not admit that he lost the match, Mr. Blackwhite explained. I understand, Xiang Wenjian answered. The wager is that no one in the Plum Manor can beat Brother Feng's sword art anyway. So as long as no winner can be claimed, we don't lose our wager. That's correct, Mr. Blackwhite nodded. Define orders? Ooh. Thanks to you for keeping my ardors inside my belly. I think my anger, I would say. My anger or frustration. Come on. I feel good about this. No enthusiasm or passion. Damn. That was close. Alright, that's 3 songs, you bastards. 3 songs. Reaching under the stone table, Mr. Blackwhite drew a squared-shaped iron board from underneath. The iron board had 19 horizontal lines and 19 vertical lines engraved onto it. Turned out this was a game board cast in iron. Holding a corner of the iron game board, he said, Brother Feng, let me use this game board as my weapon to check out your brilliant moves. He's using an iron Go board as his weapon. He really loves Go. I've heard that Second Master's game board is a magical treasure item that can control many kinds of weapons and projectiles, Xiang Wenjian said. Mr. Blackwhite cast a long glance at him and then replied, Brother Tong certainly has a wide learning and a retentive memory. Very admirable. Very admirable. In fact, this weapon of mine is no magical item. It was made from magnets, so it would be able to attract game pieces made of iron. This way, when I played games with other people while boarding boats or on horsebacks in former years, the game pieces would stay and allow us to continue with the game. I see, Jiang Wenjian answered. Hearing these words, Ling Huchong thought to himself, luckily Brother Xian gave me the pointer ahead of time. Otherwise, my longsword would have been attracted to his game board right from the start. Oh, it's a magnet, guys. It's a magnet. And I'd have lost the match without the real fight. When I spar with this person, I have to make sure that I don't let his game board touch my longsword. At that thought, he pointed his longsword to the floor and then cupped his hands in salute. Second Master, thanks for giving me the opportunity to ask advice from you. I dare not. Brother Fang's understanding in the art of the sword is brilliant. I have never seen extraordinary sword skills in my life. Please, start, Mr. Blackwhite said. With a random slice, Ling Huchong let his longsword wiggle in the air, following a squiggly line. What kind of sword move is this? Mr. Blackwhite hesitated for a fraction of a second. Seeing that the tip of the sword quickly approaching his own throat, he swung his game board and blocked. But Ling Huchong had redirected the stab and thrust his long sword toward his right shoulder. Without much thinking, Mr. Blackwhite moved the game board and blocked again. Before the long sword even approached the game board, Ling Huchong had retracted it and thrust it at Mr. Black's lower stomach instead, which Mr. Blackwhite blocked again. If I don't counterattack, how do I take over the initiative? Mr. Blackwhite thought inwardly. In the game of Go, it is very important to control the initiative of the game. In a martial arts competition, it is also critical to control the initiative. As an expert in the gamesmanship, Mr. Blackwhite, of course, was very familiar with this idea. So, not wasting another moment, he raised his game board and pounded it toward Ling Huchong's right shoulder. The game board was about 2 feet wide and 1 inch thick. It was a very heavy piece of weapon. If it smashed into the long sword, even if the iron board didn't have magnetism, the long sword would have still been broken. Turning his body slightly toward the side, Ling Huchong drove the sword toward the Mr. Blackwhite's lower rib cage. In Mr. Blackwhite's eyes, his thrust didn't look like a legitimate move at all, but the spots it was attacking certainly required attention. So he swung the game board in a tilted angle to knock toward the longsword, and at the same time pushed the game board forward. This move, Big Hossie, was one that contained counterattacking in the defending. If Ling Huchong had to respond to this move, then his following moves would pour out in a steady stream. Who would have thought that Ling Huchong paid no attention to this move? Jabbing his longsword with an angle, Ling Huchong had launched a forestalled attack. Thus, Mr. Blackwhite's defending move containing counterattacking function only had half the effect. The defending part worked, but the counterattacking didn't. Afterwards, one thrust after another, Ling Huchong attacked over 40 times without any delay. Mr. Blackwhite blocked left and warded right, and defended his front and protected his back, putting up a defensive shield so tight as though if one splashed water toward the shield, not even a drop of water would make it through. A very firm shield indeed. But they exchanged over 40 moves, and Mr. Blackwhite's over 40 moves were all defending moves. He didn't even have a spare second to launch one counter-attacking move. Mr. Baldbrush, Mr. Paint, Ling Jian, and Shi Lingwei were completely stupefied. They could all see with their own eyes that Ling Huchong's moves were neither quick, nor overwhelming, nor fierce, and the transformation between moves didn't seem tricky or crafty. But every time when he thrust his long sword out, it would always put Mr. Blackwhite into straitened circumstances and make him work to make up for his flaws. Mr. Baldbrush and Mr. Paint both understood it very well, that there is a flaw in every single martial arts move. But if one could forestall and attack the opponent's vital points first, then his own flaws would not have become flaws. And even if he had hundreds or even thousands of flaws, it would not have mattered. And the 40 or so continuing attacking moves Ling Huchang showed simply followed this principle. And the 40 or so continuing attack moves Ling Huchang showed simply followed this principle. Mr. Black-White also felt the shock growing bigger and bigger in his heart. He really wanted to launch his own counterattack, but as soon as he moved the game board slightly, the sword tip of the opponent was already pointing toward the flaws in his own moves. Within the 40 moves also, he simply had no chance to improve the situation, as though he was playing a game of Go with someone who had much higher skills. And for every single one of the 40 or so game pieces the opponent played, he had no choice but to respond. Mr. Black-White knew that if the fight had continued like this, even after another 100 or 200 moves, he would still be in the same boat, where he would keep taking hits and never able to fight back. What is straightened? Is that even a real word? It would always put Mr. Black-White into straightened circumstances. I think it means dangerous, like dire straits. I think it means dangerous. Ah! Restricted. Oh. Restricted. God damn it. It is a word. Alright. So, into restricted circumstances. That makes sense. What is that? 4 songs? Jesus Christ, you guys. They're getting more and more every week. If I don't take on some risks for a chance of success, then my illustrious name would have been completely ruined, he thought to himself. Swinging his game board forward horizontally, he smashed it toward Ling Huchang's left side waist in high speed. Once again, without dodge for the strike, Ling Huchang thrust his longsword toward Mr. Black-White's lower stomach. But this time, Mr. Black-White didn't retrieve his game board to defend, and still smashed the game board forward, as though he was ready to risk his life and have a common ruin with his opponent. At the time when the sword tip approached his stomach, he suddenly reached out with his left hand and clipped at the sword blade with his index finger and middle finger. He had mastered the profound heavenly finger kung fu, and the 2 fingers carried immense inner strength, which was really no less than another powerful weapon. Seeing Mr. Black-White using such a risky move, the 5 bystanders all cried out in shock. Such move would no longer qualify as a contest of skills, but rather a game of life and death. If he failed to catch the sword with his fingers, then the sword tip would undoubtedly end up penetrating his stomach. Within the fraction of an instant, all 5 of them felt cold sweat in their palms. Mr. Black-White's 2 fingers were almost touching the sharp blade of the sword, and whether he could catch the blade or not, one out of the two sparring pair would for sure get wounded or get killed. If he did catch the blade, then Ling Huchang's longsword could not go any further. The game board would strike him in the waist, and he would not have any time to evade it. If he failed to catch the blade, or if he did catch the blade but failed to stop the longsword from going forward, then the longsword would continue with the thrust, and even if Mr. Black-White wanted to leap back, he would have no time to do so. Just at the instant when Mr. Black-White's finger barely touched the blade of the sword, the tip of the sword suddenly went upward and pointed at his throat. This change simply exceeded everybody's wildest imagination. Throughout all the martial arts in the history, there couldn't have ever have there couldn't have ever had a move like this, because this would have meant that the first thrust toward the lower stomach was actually a fake. Using such a fake move in a fight between two top-notch martial artists would have been a joke. But even though this move did not comply with any orthodox principle in the art of the sword, it did come out through Ling Hu Chong's hand. The sword tip prodded upward toward Mr. Blackweise's throat. If Mr. Blackweise's game board continued with the strike forward, the prod would have penetrated his throat first. Utterly dumbstruck, Mr. Blackwhite used all his strength and held the game board still. He was a man with very quick wits and a master in gamesmanship. At the moment of the imminent peril, he immediately figured out the opponent's intention. If he aborted his strike with the game board, then the opponent's longsword would not prod forward either. Sure enough, seeing that he held the game board still, Ling Hu Chong also froze the thrust with the longsword. The tip of the sword was only inches from his throat, while his game board was also only inches from Ling Hu Chong's waist. Both of them held their positions steady and froze like two lifeless statues. Although it looked as if neither was willing to budge, Ling Hu Chong was really the one with all the advantages. The game board was a heavy item. Only when it was striking down from several feet afar would it incur any damage. At present, it was only inches from Ling Hu Chong. Even if Mr. Blackwhite decided to push it forward with lots of power, it wouldn't do Ling Hu Chong much harm. But all Ling Hu Chong had to do was to prod forward gently, and the sword tip would easily kill his opponent. It was pretty obvious for everyone to tell who was in better shoes. Well, neither dares to move first. That's called a dual life in the rule of Go. Second master is really both intelligent and courageous. You have ended up a draw in the match against Brother Feng, Xiang Wenjiang declared with a grin. Ling Hu Chong figured out how to animation cancel. That's funny, Patrick. That's good. Ling Hu Chong withdrew his longsword and took 2 steps back. Please excuse my boldness, he bowed. Brother Tong must be joking. How can one call this a draw? Brother Feng's understanding in the art of the sword is incomparable. I just had a crushing defeat, Mr. Blackwhite muttered. Second brother, your kung fu with your game piece darts is a unique skill in the martial world. Nobody could ever escape it when you shoot out 361 black and white game pieces. Why don't you check out this Brother Feng's kung fu in breaking darts? Mr. Paint suggested. Mr. Blackwhite felt a throb in his heart. He glanced at Xiang Wenjiang, who nodded slightly a few times. Turning his head to look at Ling Hu Chong, he found no expression on his face. This one's sword skills are to the extreme, he thought secretly. In the entire world, that person probably is the only one who could defeat him. The look on those two's faces suggested that they had great confidence. If I have another contest of darts, most probably I'll end up making myself a fool one more time. At that thought, he shook his head and showed a wry smile. I have already admitted my defeat. What's the need for another match of darts? Done. Done. Was that long? That was... Or no. Maybe not. That seemed like a long chapter. But it's basically a chapter where Ling Hu Chong just kicks the asses of these 3 martial arts masters. And he's saying, and this guy's like saying, in the entire world, that person probably is the only one who could defeat him. I wonder who that person is. It's probably the fourth, their big brother, right? There are 4 of the playfellows. We've only met 3 brothers so far, but I think in the next chapter he's probably gonna fight the 4th brother. Alright, did you guys like the chapter? That was pretty fun. Yeah, it is done, Drift. It is done. That was fun. It looks like in martial arts, or at least in sword arts, Ling Hu Chong is one of the best at the moment. Yeah. I'm telling you, once he like if he regains his inner energy, his inner strength, then he might be like the best in the world. Riri. It does seem like a shonen anime. That's true. That's true. That's true. All right, how many songs did how many songs did we come up with? Like 4? Was it 4? All right, what song do you want me to sing? 4 songs. Boom, 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 boom. Let me eat some Japanese Pringles. Yeah, I think it was 4 songs. Seriously, this tastes exactly like Pringles. I Kissed a Girl by Katy Perry. I don't know that song. You want me to sing Tennessee Whiskey? Oh my god. That is so hard to sing. Alright, but I do know the song, so according to our bet, our wager, according to our wager, I have to sing it. Oh god. Poker face? Ah! Alright, give me, I'm gonna go pee, okay? Alright, give me like a minute. I pretty much am only familiar with the chorus to Tennessee Whiskey. So this is gonna be interesting. I hope I remember the rest. Alright, we got Tennessee Whiskey, we got Poker Face. Alright, we need 2 more. Let's keep listing songs. Tennessee Whiskey. Karaoke. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right.
Don't press that skip ad button. I can
No,
guarantee
I'm pressing
it will
the
be the
skip ad
biggest
button.
financial mistake of
Don't
your
tell me
life.
what to do. Do we need it louder? Oh, no, no. Chris Staples. Stop. Oh, drink, drink, drink. All right, all right. I'm gonna drink first. I do have some wine. Let me get in the mood. I don't have Tennessee whiskey, unfortunately. But I do have some white wine that we can drink. Cheers. All right. Let's do this. Used to spend my nights out in the bar room. Gotta go low. Liquor was the only love I knew. But you rescued me from reaching for the bottom and brought me back from being too far gone. You're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're as warm as a glass of brandy. And honey, I stay stoned on your love all the time. I've been locked for love in all the same old places. Found the bottom of the bottle's always dry. Oh God. But when you poured out your heart, I didn't waste it. 'Cause there's nothing like your love to get me high. Yeah, you're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're as warm as a glass of brandy. And honey, I stay stoned on your love all the time. Folsom Prison. Oh. Did I know that song? Johnny Cash? You're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're as warm as a glass of brandy. And honey, I stay stoned on your love all the time. Oh, as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. Tennessee whiskey. Tennessee whiskey. You're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. Tennessee whiskey. Tennessee whiskey. There you go. There you go. Folsom Prison. I bet I know that song from Johnny Cash. Folsom City. No, Folsom Prison. Damn, I wish. Yeah, I only am familiar with the chorus for Tennessee Whiskey. I kind of knew the other stuff, but Folsom Prison lyric. Yeah, I don't know Folsom Prison. Maybe if I hear the melody, but I don't know it. What do we have? Poker Face? Oh God! Oh God! All right, let's do Poker Face. Fine. Why you guys gotta make me do this? Why? Why? How does freaking Poker Face go anyways? Poker Face. Oh, it's the one that goes ma 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 ma. In the style of Queen. Let's find a good karaoke version.
Ordinary tissues cause your nose dread.
Yeah, we are the champions. Yes. Let's do that afterwards.
Instead.
Love me some Freddie Mercury.
Is this just fantasy? Caught in a landslide. No escape
from reality. Open your eyes. Look up to the skies and see. I'm just a poor boy. I need no sympathy. Easy go, little high, little low. Anyway the wind blows doesn't really matter to me. To me. It's coming back, it's coming back. Mama, just kill the man. Put a gun against his head. Pulled my trigger, now he's dead. Mama, life had just begun. But now he's gone and thrown it all away. How does he do that? Mama, ooh, didn't mean to make you cry. If I'm not back again this time tomorrow, carry on, 'cause if nothing really matters. Too late, my time has come. Send shivers down my spine, body's aching all the time. Goodbye, everybody, I've got to go. Gotta leave you all behind and face the truth. Mama, ooh, I don't wanna die. Sometimes wish I'd never been born at all. Oh, here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. I see a little silhouette of a man. Scaramouche, Scaramouche, do you see the fandango? Very, very frightening. Galileo, 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 Galileo Figaro. I'm just a poor boy, nobody loves me. He's just a poor boy from a poor family. Da, 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 da. Easy come, easy go, will you let me go? Bismillah, no, we will not let you go. Bismillah, no, we will not let you go. Let it go! Let it go! Let it go! Words are not there. Mamma mia, mamma mia. Beelzebub. Da, 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 da. For me. Oh god, the words are not here, guys. This version doesn't have all the words. So you think you can love and leave me to die? Oh baby, can't do this to me, baby. Just gotta get out. Just gotta get right out of here. Nothing really matters. Anyone can see. Nothing really matters. Nothing really matters to me. All right. Yeah. That was Bohemian Rhapsody. Let's do We Will. No, what was that song again? We Are the Champion, guys. We are the champions. We are the champions. Freddie Mercury has such a good range. This is all just a ploy to switch to a singing career.
Want to make sure your hands stay clean? Skip the dirty hand towel and stay clean with Bounty.
My album drops in 2 weeks, you guys. No. Stop. Skip. Alright, this is We Are the Champions. I pay my dues time after time. I've done my sentence, but committed no crime. And bad mistakes, I've made a few. I've had my share of sand kicked in my face, but I've come through. We are the champions, my friend, and we'll keep on fighting till the end. We are the champions. We are the champions. No time for losers, 'cause we are the champions of the world. I've taken my vow and my curtain call. You brought me fame and fortune and everything that goes with it. I'll thank you all, but it's been no bed of roses, no pleasure cruise. I consider it a challenge before the human race, and I ain't gonna lose. Damn it. We are the champions, my friend, and we'll keep on fighting till the end. We are the champions. We are the champions. No time for losers, 'cause we are the champions. We are the champions, my friend, and we'll keep on fighting till the end. Oh, we are the champions. We are the champions. No time for losers, 'cause we are the champions. Ah, nailed it. All right, what else? What else? What else? That was a good song. Dun, dun, dun. That was 2 Queen songs in a row, you guys. 2 Queen songs. Oh, Nirvana? Oh, I can't do Nirvana. Just a Girl. Oh, God. That's good. All right, let's do No Doubt, Just a Girl. I hope I remember that. What's the other No Doubt song? Is there another No Doubt song? Is that more famous? Is that the more famous one or the other one? No doubt. So, oh, Don't Speak. Did we do Don't Speak already? Don't speak. I know just what you're saying. I don't think we did Don't Speak, right? Tell me if we did. Let's do that one. No doubt. Don't speak. You and me, we used to be together, every day together, always. I really feel that I'm losing my best friend. I can't believe this could be the end. It looks as though you're letting go, and if it's real then I don't want to know. Don't speak, I know just what you're saying, so please stop explaining. Don't tell me 'cause it hurts. Don't speak, I know just what you're thinking, I don't need your reasons. Don't tell me 'cause it hurts. Our memories, they can be inviting. Some are all together, mighty frightening. As we die, both you and I, my head in my hands, I sit and cry. Don't speak, I know just what you're saying, so please stop explaining. Don't tell me 'cause it hurts. No, no, no. Don't speak, I know what you're thinking, and I don't need your reason. Don't tell me 'cause it hurts. It's all ending, I gotta stop pretending who we are. Oh my god, I'm getting into it, you guys. I'm getting into it. You and me, I can see us dying away. Don't speak, I know just what you're saying, so please stop explaining. Don't tell me 'cause it hurts. No, no, don't speak, I know what you're thinking, and I don't need your reasons. Don't tell me 'cause it hurts. Don't tell me 'cause it hurts. I know what you're thinking, so please stop explaining. Don't speak, don't speak, don't speak, oh. I know what you're thinking, and I don't need your reasons. I know you're good, I know you're good, I know you're real good. La 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 la, la 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 la. No, no. hush, darling. Hush, hush, darling. Hush, hush, don't tell me 'cause it hurts. Hush, hush, darling. Hush, hush, darling. Hush, hush, don't tell me 'cause it hurts. Ooh, hush, hush, darling. Hush, hush, darling. Hush, hush, don't tell me 'cause it hurts. Yes. That's a good song, that's no doubt. Oh my god. Alright, that's enough. That's enough. What was that, like 6 songs already? Jesus Christ. Man, once I get started, I get really into it. You wonder if I am starting to like singing? I've always liked singing. What do you mean? I just can't do it. Oh, Darkland Master. Well, I'm glad you got to hear my karaoke. I think we're done, guys. I think we're good. I think we're good. We can stop now. I can stop embarrassing myself. Hey, thank you for joining this week. I will see you next time. I love you. And yeah, I've always been a karaoke dude. What do you mean?